Even though I'm much more into classic Tomb Raider, so pre-Tomb Raider Legend, I've never really gelled with Last Revelation. It's the only core design classic that I actively dislike. Don't hate me. And in my ranking video of the series, I put Rise of the Tomb Raider above it, so I thought it'd be interesting to specifically compare them both in a versus video to rationalize why I think Rise is actually a net gain on Last Revelation, because it is an unusual angle coming from a classic fan, so hear me out. The first point of comparison is the puzzles. I've never really been into puzzles in games. I often find them to be an annoying pace killer. You might be thinking, why would a classic Tomb Raider fan be against puzzles? Well, if you think about it, the amount of them in old school Tomb Raiders were very few and far between. In Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3, 5 and 6, there's only like 3, maybe 4 actual puzzles per game. Tomb Raider 4, Last Revelation being the odd one out, of course, by ramping up the amount of puzzles. I've observed this bizarre Mandela effect where people seem to think early Tomb Raider games, except Tomb Raider 4, were full of puzzles galore, and I'm like, fucking where, bitch? Yes, deciphering the Greek symbols in Palace Midas is a puzzle, but putting 3 cogs in a wall and pulling the lever right next to it just isn't. The food chain puzzle in Lost City of Tinos is exactly that, but then I've seen people refer to the simple act like moving a block just out the way as a puzzle, and I really worry for such people. Even the official blog suggested Breath of Hades was a puzzle. It's only a bunch of platforms. Anyway, Crystal introduced physics-based puzzles, albeit very easy ones. This was their stamp on the series, and one of the better ones to be honest. By the time Rise came out, Crystal's physics puzzle difficulty increased a little bit, so it's interesting to compare it to how Last Revelation, one of the hardest, if not the hardest in the franchise, did them. Tomb Raider 4 had a lot of, in my opinion, really tedious and profoundly boring puzzles. I know Lost Library is a fan favourite level for some baffling reason, but having to use an unexplained light mechanic on your binoculars, which themselves are almost never used, to look up a random ceiling shaft, to memorize a sequence of colors so you can slowly move multiple statues in a large planetarium into the right position is not my idea of a fun time. Then there's the fire circle puzzle where you just pull a load of levers, or the Citadel compass puzzle. Who actually finds this kind of thing fun? Genuine question. That kind of slow block pushing isn't even hard, it's just tiresome. Admittedly, there are some that I do enjoy very much, like Senet, the Water Scales puzzle, and the Alexandria Mirror Room, because they use new and interesting mechanics, but that's it. I like the level itself to be the puzzle, like the water levels in The Cistern, not small scale tasks that just have you icon matching and pulling 900 levers literally right next to each other just to pad it out. When the rest of the classics had switches, usually that would be at the end of an exploration task, platforming section, series of traps or something, and the switch would be there just to progress the level at the end of that. Last Revelation does have traps and exploration obviously, but they seem to make levers, block pushing and other tedious crap be the puzzles entirely. This is why I think Rise's physics-based puzzles, while just as easy as Last Revelations, are at least more entertaining. I like that their puzzles cleverly disguised as being believably real-world situations. The rope arrow might get hate for being repetitive, but while it's only one tool, it's used in different ways, so it's as good as if it were multiple tools. I think the design of the Kitesh bucket puzzle is low-key genius with how it's been laid out, so you can't circumvent it but can see what needs to be done and how it blends perfectly with the larger task at hand, which is to free the trebuchet. I would take things like the Chamber of Exorcism or the Baths of Kitesh over the crap Tomb Raider 4 thoughtlessly makes you trudge through, like the Citadel underwater rooms that seem to have no actual logic behind them. Rise's puzzles simply have more thought, variety and originality to them and seamlessly serve the level at large, such as flooding the Prophet's tomb and opening the abandoned mine's canyon door. I know the big caveat is that many of them are in optional challenge tombs, so you could theoretically consider at least 9 of them to not exist, yet I find myself enjoying those 9 ones so much that I actively choose to do them, whereas the ones I'm forced to do in Last Revelation, I'd rather drink petrol and drop a lit match down my throat. Moving on to level design, I think most people, not everyone, but probably most people, at least acknowledge the Cairo section in Last Revelation is just wall-to-wall dog shit. This is where a lot of people just give up, and I don't blame them one bit. Yeah, the atmosphere might be cool and immersive to some, but we're talking about level design, not aesthetics. This section of levels is some of the most tedious crap you will experience in gaming. The back and forth between multiple loading screens, the aimless nature of it all, the ambiguous layout, the bike that can't reverse properly with its awkward sidecar, the things the game expects you to do are just unreasonable. This isn't because it was 1999, because Tomb Raider 1 and 2 weren't this much of a dick to you, or at least not nearly as frequently. It's not even just Cairo. While Giza has one of my favourite sections in the franchise, climbing the pyramids, the before and after is just floor to ceiling shite. Slowly crawling around a maze of tunnels to retrieve an item, or swimming around a complex multi-layered maze of randomly opened trapdoor exits is just ridiculous. The directionless nature of the maze in Khufu's Queen's Pyramids, or the repetition of the Master Bass. Does anyone actually reach these sections and think, oh my god, I can't wait to play it? Yeah, Rise of the Tomb Raider might go a bit far with the gunfights and the wannabe #epic set pieces, but that is the lesser of the two evils compared to this. I know Tomb Raider 4 is somehow a fan favourite, but it wouldn't make you a hypocrite to love the game and still acknowledge its many flaws. When it comes to the bigger picture of the Tomb Raider level design formula, Rise does have, at least disguised, non-linear exploration, especially if you turn off the survival instincts as an option entirely. It has gear gating based progression, meaning there are sections in the environment gated off that require tools to get through, which you get along the story, such as the knife, petrol bombs, explosives, and the grapple axe, which is surprisingly versatile and consistent for a Crystal Tomb Raider, as it works on swing hooks, climbable walls, and pretty much any ledge. My favourite tool you get is the broadhead climbing arrows. These tools are effectively just reskinned versions of keys and items that you'd place in receptacles from games prior. Because they're still just items that allow access to places you couldn't get to before, it is conducive to the Tomb Raider level design formula. Therefore, it's functionally the same as any classic Tomb Raider key. Side note, this is why I feel Rise, and to a lesser extent the 2013 game, are more Tomb Raider when it comes to level design than Legend only pretended to be. Moving on to comparing the general gameplay, there are so many odd little things specifically designed to be annoying in Last Revelation, like how bats are deliberately triggered to appear only when you're vulnerable on monkey bars or trapped in a crawling position. There's also the forced health loss from locust swarms, the placement of flying scarabs on precarious platforms, or the appearance of air wraiths that damage you unavoidably. Rise of the Tomb Raider does of course have things that could be considered tedious, other than the sound of Lara's voice, such as the maddeningly slow, boring opening. While Last Revelation has crawl spaces upon crawl spaces upon crawl spaces, Rise's equivalent is forced walking, which no one on the planet enjoys. If they did, they'd voluntarily do it themselves, but Crystal love to forcibly slow you down to a, at least figurative, crawl. Particularly in the opening, there are multiple sections where Lara is incapacitated. Rise also likes to have these fake tense moments of supposed danger that just don't land on account of you basically having no control during these scripted moments. Very tedious stuff, but at least you can just sit there and hold forward while rolling your eyes. On the whole, Tomb Raider 4 has more aggravating things more often, and they're things that can kill or damage you. Rise also has better boss fights, Baba Yaga is a fantastic bit of gameplay, and the final helicopter battle is better than the somewhat anticlimax of imprisoning Set. Rise also has Blood Ties, which is one of the only times the parental drama is actually genuinely well written and interesting, although it took a different team, Nixies, who developed Blood Ties to write it. The riddles, key items, and uncovering of different parts of Croft Manor is very underrated, so Baba Yaga and Blood Ties are two big points towards Rise. I do enjoy underwater swimming, so that's a point towards Last Revelation. Some of the worst sections are set underwater, but that's a level design, not a mechanics issue. Rise of the Tomb Raider pathetically only allows you to stay submerged just beneath the surface of water. So much wasted potential there. Combat in Last Revelation is probably marginally better because it has more of a variety of enemies, being lots of different animals, creatures, and a few human archetypes. The only hostile enemies in Rise are wolves, big cats, and a few human archetypes. The undead skeletons in Last Revelation are quite annoying if you don't have explosives, and the deliberately frustrating placement of a lot of enemies means it only ranks above by default. As for comparing the music, Rise's score is so painfully generic, unmemorable and bland that it may as well be royalty-free stock music. I've listened to it on its own when searching for background music for other videos, and that's all it could ever be good for. Music needs to have presence and truly add something to a scene. It's the key ingredient that shouldn't be forgotten about. Last Revelation's score has atmosphere and is memorable. It's rich, emotive, and has actual tunes, as in catchy melodies to them, and that's the winning combination for any score. Jeep thrills, the main theme, and all the random incidental music is just great, whereas Rise's whole score is just sonic mush. If Rise's music was a drink, it would be warm water with a nasty copper aftertaste, and Last Revelation would be molten Belgian chocolate. In the case of the story, writing and characters, obviously that's night and day better in Last Revelation. It's not even a question for me. The story, the Lara, the dialogue is much more captivating to me. Lara has much more of an arc and is a fun, dynamic character to watch, which is impressive considering story took a backseat back then, and yet it was written and acted much better than Rise, which has a flat, stale, miserable character front and center with no personality. The story in Rise wants to be this deep, thought-provoking, emotional experience, but just comes off as a cheesy student film with matching cringe-inducing dialogue. The actual plotline is just an amalgamation of reskinned tropes and cliches like the wicked stepmother and the near enough recycled undead army the previous game used. Last Revelation has more originality going on. It might have been able to get away with that if the story took a backseat, but I think Crystal expected us to be impressed with this trash. It legitimately boggles my mind how anyone would want their name in the credits associated with the writing of this game. Years later, I'm still consciously in disbelief at how something this poorly written actually got released. Like, no one stepped in during the development, watched the cutscenes and said, "Is this like a joke?" That's what toxic positivity does. If my name was on the writing credits, I would genuinely legally change my name and move to North Korea. The last thing I want to compare is the variety of locations. Both games primarily take place in one setting, Egypt in Tomb Raider 4 and Siberia in Tomb Raider 10. As that wise philosopher Taylor Swift once said, variety is the spice of life. Except she didn't say that, and much less is she wise, but the sentiment remains. I think Rise does a better job at visual variety. Yes, there's a lot of sterile, snowy environments, but there's also the beautiful geothermal valley, the Greek ruins, the blue, icy hidden city of Kitesh, the warm Syrian prophet's tomb, and the mural-adorned Byzantine sites. Last Revelation does as good a job at diversity as it really could, and Cambodia is one of the most beautiful locations in the franchise, but aside from that and Cairo being atmospherically very different to the rest of the game, but in my opinion just being an ugly, pukey snot green, the difference between Karnak, Alexandria and Giza isn't nearly as pronounced as the micro and macro differences you find across Rise of the Tomb Raider. So ultimately, while I think Last Revelation has more style through the atmosphere, except Cairo, the writing, music and more realistic character animation when just traversing the environment compared to the goofy Looney Tunes movement of Rise, the things it does badly, it does really badly. Apart from the forced walking, abysmal story and music, the limited swimming, the goofy flailing movement and excessive combat, the puzzles, the less tedious level design, and the lack of things designed just to irritate you make Rise a net positive. If you've actually played both recently and don't just have a rough memory of one or the other, what do you think is better? I know my audience is mostly classic fans, but I'd hope we can look at the grey areas and recognise silver linings and give credit where it's due. I'm Seth Mackenzie, thank you so much for watching.